Welcome to the podcast that buffs your Hearthstone game. This is Velen's Chosen.
Not all who wander are lost.
Greetings, Visionaries, and welcome to Velen's Chosen. Whether you're a competitive player, an arena specialist, a deck-building visionary, a battlegrounds master, or a salty, wild-playing dog, like I am, we can help you buff your game and achieve your Hearthstone goals. Very excited to bring you this show tonight. I have a very special guest with me. You may have heard of him before in the wild arena if you are a wild player like myself. You may have heard of him. I'm pleased to announce that we have Mr. James Corbett visiting our show tonight. Welcome, James.
Thank you. I hope you're going well. Very happy to be here and talk about the entire mess that is wild and get into a whole bunch of Hearthstone. It should be really good. Really happy to be here.
I think we led the episode with an appetizer of salt.
Yes. You said salt and I dove right in on that.
So James, before we get into the thing that we want to, I guess to say elaborate on, let's hear a little bit about yourself first. So how did you get into Hearthstone, card games, even video gaming? Just tell us your story as much as you want us to know anyway.
Sure. Well, when I was very little, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was like the big show. That was like a cartoon that was on. So a lot of my friends, when I was probably about 10 years old, we all played Yu-Gi-Oh! So that was like my introduction to card games. And for a long time, I kind of went away from it, but it was always there, like this enjoyment of card games and stuff. And so later on, I went away to university with my friends. Some of them got into Hearthstone, and they'd been nagging me for about a year to try and pick up the game. And with that card game background, I was really excited to pick it up, so I did. So that was right around 2015, so around TGT or a month before that. And I've been basically completely addicted since then.
Now, when you say completely addicted, what does that mean? Does that mean like an hour a day, every free moment, like scheduled 3 or 4 hours a day? Like what does that mean for you?
Yeah, I mean, let's not look at like the bank account or like the time investment. looking at the wins and stuff, like it's best to ignore that. But no, I think I would have played. I think I've played Hearthstone probably like at least like once or twice, like every week for over like years at this point. You know, it's been like 4 years, and I still keep coming back to the game. It's my most played game by far. Like you said, what's my experience with gaming? I'm not really like a gamer. It's not really like a big thing. It's more like I'm just a Hearthstone player. That's the game I play. It's the game I enjoy. So I just keep coming back to this and still really love it, even if it has its down moments. But I still keep coming back.
So when you think of the positive sides of the game, like what is it about the game? Because you said you're not really a gamer, as people would traditionally think that. Like what is it that kind of really latched you on, or you latched on to, I should say, to the game? Like what captivated you about Hearthstone that makes you keep coming back?
I think it's the puzzle aspect. Like it's less of a, when you say gaming, there can be things like shooters, and that's not really what I'm into, like the more like fast-paced kind of thing. But with Hearthstone, it constantly feels like a puzzle, like making the decisions. It feels like a pure strategy game, which I'm more into. I think that the fact that there are constantly new cards and sort of the puzzle is constantly changing, that makes it really addictive, and to come back and you constantly get these new, these new tools to mess around with, and you can be creative, and it's really fun, like from my perspective. So I think that's what keeps bringing me back to the game. Is the new cards and new interactions and testing things out, and yeah, it's definitely the game I play the most and I enjoy the most.
So you've been playing it for a while now, and you're a wild player like myself, and do you find that as the card pool builds, and obviously the problem becomes, I guess you could say, more complex, does that ever feel daunting or just more exciting?
In terms of like building decks and all that kind of thing, or
yeah, so now it's like, at one point in time maybe there was a few hundred cards to work with. Now there's thousands of cards to work with, and it just seems to just kind of evolve into this crazy mass of swirling possibilities. Does that ever daunt you, or does that just excite you?
No, that's definitely the exciting thing. That's what makes me like most wanted to play Wild. I used to play Standard very competitively. I was a very focused on Standard for a long time, and I was quite close to breaking into the competitive scene with Standard. But eventually, I just wanted to swing over to Wild. It was so fun and diverse, and there was so many little interactions and deck building things, which I really like. And so I think that's definitely an excitement thing when the card pool keeps getting wider, and I get to keep testing all this new stuff.
Do you ever find yourself being surprised by cards that you forgot existed, somebody builds a deck and you're like, what's that card? And you look at it and you think for a second, I don't remember this card very clearly. Or what set did that card come out yet? Are we at critical mass now where that starts happening more often than we thought?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the funny side effect with the whole Evolve stuff going on right now, is every time there's an Evolve played, I get to learn about a card that I forgot existed. This random minion pops onto the board. But yeah, for sure. Like, it's fun. Like, seeing constantly new cards or old cards come back and they get a boost. I mean, there are times where something like Quest Rogue all of a sudden brought Stone Tusk Boar into the meta. And all of a sudden, like, Stone Tusk Boar was like in a tier 1 deck. And there's definitely moments like that. And I think that's great when old cards kind of get a new lease on life. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. I like that. New lease on life. Oh, that's cool. So, as a Wild player, you have all these choices and stuff like that. What kind of sticks out to you as like your favorite deck that you've played? And because you're kind of a deck craftsman, what's your favorite deck that you ever made? Played and made. Like the favorite deck that I ever played. Wow, it's so tough. I'm trying to think about it. I think I'd probably go Tempo Rogue. I think like old school Tempo Rogue when that was in Standard. That was one of my favorites ever. And that crosses over to the favorite deck that I ever made. I think I was one of the first people that kind of really pushed Tempo Rogue into being like a recognized high tier deck. So I had a little bit to do with that development. But in terms of like more other decks, like other more creative things, I would say, I don't know. I think Miracle Priest is a current deck that I'm playing that's very wacky that you wouldn't have seen. It's very off meta. It uses a very strange interaction with test subjects, Radiant Elemental, and it's like going infinite and cycling through your entire deck. With Embalming, Powered Shield, and Topsy Turvy. That's a lot of card names, so it might be hard to think about. But you basically just keep cycling through your deck, and you keep getting Shield back in your hand, and you keep cycling through your entire deck. So it's very crazy. It's a very fun interaction that I'm playing right now. So I'd say that's one of my favorites. I could actually tracked with you on that, and I just thought to myself, I'm pretty sure that I would get tilted off the planet if I played against something like that.
Oh yeah,
if I thought I had a chance, and then that happened, I'm like, no.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those decks where you're happy if it's off meta and it's fun, but if everyone's playing it, it's horrible. Absolutely.
Sure. So as long as it remains in the realm of I play this once every maybe 50 games against this, I should say.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
what happens when you're what happens if you're like in high Wild tier legend ladder, like your top 10, say, and then you queue that up and you keep playing against the same people? What happens? Do they just switch to something that auto beats it, or or what do you?
I think that's when you start getting a recent opponent would like to be your friend. I think that's when that starts coming through.
Yeah, I'll bet it does. It probably is led with what is this? What is this?
Yeah. How are you always so lucky? All that kind of thing. Or they're just thanking you or they're thanking you for the free wins because you're playing something very bad. It depends how the deck's going, but yeah.
Sure. That's awesome. All right. Well, we have a bit of news. There's been a quiet sort of week for Hearthstone news. I think it's because in holiday week coming up. For those of you who are maybe not U.S. citizens or live in the U.S., we have Thanksgiving coming up in about a few days. So things tend to go quiet at most companies, schools, businesses, because people take time off, so probably won't be hearing too much. But they did give us a little bit of new cards to look at, to kind of think about and ponder. And I'm going to kind of ask James's opinion on these cards as they, standard, of course, is on the table, but kind of how they might fit into Wild, possibly. So we have this first up card. It is a 7-cost legendary minion. It's called Shuma. It has got a 1 attack and 7 health, and it reads, at the end of your turn, fill your board with 1/1 tentacles. It's an ongoing effect by the looks of it. So, all right, James, I'm going to kick it to you. What do you think of this card? Does it seem like it could have a place? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it meh? We don't know. Haven't seen the rest of the set yet.
I think it's a little bit better than what the general consensus seems to be. I've seen a lot of hate on this card immediately, it seems like, from the wider public, and I think it actually has potential. Absolutely. I wouldn't feel like confident giving it, like 5 stars or anything, but I think it's a card to keep your eye on.
Sure.
It presents 7 power in play, like the turn is played, 7 mana, 7 power, like 7 attack on board. That's decent. It's ongoing. 7 health is really hard to remove, so it does require investment. So if you're ahead on the board, or if you're ahead, or like in a naked board, nothing on board, and you play this, it can be very difficult for the opponent to answer. So I think there are places like Token Druids or Quest Hunter where this could actually be quite good. So I'd keep an eye on it. I want to see the rest of the set, but I think it's better than what the general public thinks right now. What about you?
Yeah, I think it could be a really interesting card to put in, especially decks that have the ability to buff a board. So, like, if it's one of your many iterations of filling your board with minions, like you said, a Druid would, or even Shaman, because Bloodlust is a thing.
Yeah.
If they don't see it coming or they're not planning on dealing with it, because here's the thing: if they don't deal with it, you get another board of tokens.
Yeah.
So. And that could be really problematic. I think it's better than people want it to be. I think people maybe don't want to just admit that maybe token decks are just a thing that are going to be prevalent and common at the beginning of every single card meta, right?
Yeah.
But I think it has a lot of potential, especially if you can do stuff like put like death rattles on everything on your board, or any of those card interactions, especially like in Wild. Heck, even with Druid, if you don't want 1/1s, you could, I don't know, turn them all. You do what is it? What's the plague card that turns everything into 2/2s? But
Poison Seeds.
Poison Seeds, yeah,
right.
yeah. That's not. It's not a plague card.
Yeah.
Poison Seeds. It could be. It'd be okay.
Yeah,
so,
I think something.
I could see some.
Sorry, I think something that is interesting is that, like, you'll often be faced the choice whether to deal with like all the 1/1s or the 1/7. Like, you can deal with one or the other. It's going to be hard to do both. And if you don't deal with the 1/7, it means it's coming back again next turn. And if you don't deal with the 1/1s, it means you could die to a Bloodlust. So I think that's something people haven't really been thinking about, is that it's hard to deal with the whole board at once. And then if you don't deal with it, game over. Like, we'll see. So it definitely has potential.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we're going to see some people at least attempting to make it do things, and I think that'll make the Wild West first couple days of a new set release quite interesting, and probably annoying for some people. Up next we have a Druid card. It says Secure the Deck. It's a 1-cost spell, side quest, epic card. It says attack twice with your hero. Reward: add 3 claw spells to your hand. Let's see here. So, I just realized that I forgot to put those claw spells in the show notes. I'm going to look that up.
That's okay. Yeah, I know the claw.
Yeah. So, do you know what the claw spell does offhand?
Yeah. It's 1 mana, give your hero 2 attack, and gain 2 armor. So 1 mana, 2 attack, 2 armor, I'm pretty sure.
So what was the name of that raptor card? It's like I can't remember the name of this.
Gonk the Raptor?
Gonk.
Yeah,
Gonk the Raptor.
Gonk Druid, yeah.
So is this card because it's a 1-cost card, is this card gonna bring Gonk back? Are we gonna see Gonk iterations?
I wouldn't be so certain about that. I think that's
No,
sadly not. Yeah, I don't know about this card, to be honest. Like, I'm really not sure how to evaluate a lot of these side quests. Just like, it's hard for me to figure out, like, giving that 1 mana pass to get something down the road, like, how good or bad is that? I think they're probably pretty good. I think this card is probably quite decent. Especially in something like, potentially like Quest Druid. That might be a little bit of a weird home, but you're already like floating so much mana that like getting this in for 1 mana at any point in the early game seems pretty easy, and you're often just like hero power passing anyway. So I don't know. That's a home that sort of jumped out to me at a first glance. But yeah, I'm not sure. I think it'll be okay though. We'll see.
I guess my only question with it is, it's a 1-cost card, and it's like you said, it has potential, but is it worth a whole deck slot just to get a bunch of claws? Depending, I guess it depends. Like you said, with Quest Druid, you're floating mana, but is it worth a slot?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question for sure. Yeah, is it worth that card slot for what you're getting? Like 3 claws, it's a decent reward, but it's not fantastic, right? It's just like curve filler and just being able to do these little damages. So I don't know. I'm really not sure. I think Quest Druid or those slower druids, I think it could find a home. But I'm not sure right now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. And that's the thing is like all card evaluations are totally in the realm of the subjective and the sense of like we don't really know what they're gonna do because we haven't
seen everything. Like it's hard to evaluate when we've got another 80 cards to come out for sure. Yeah.
That's for sure. Well, we have another quest card. It is a hunter card. It's a 1-cost rare. It says clear the way. And it shows griffins tearing apart a dirigible. I think it's kind of funny. It's a side quest, and it says summon 3 rush minions, and then you get the reward of summon a 4/4 griffin with rush. So, seems maybe okay, I guess. My hunter friends have been fairly tepid. All the people I know that kind of main hunter, they think it could maybe possibly have potential, but they're not even sure. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, again, this really depends on how many rush minions we get in the set. Like if there are additional rush minions, because I think right now there isn't that critical mass where you feel like you're gonna be able to easily get this quest done. But I think like on paper it could be really good. Like you just invest 1 mana and eventually you get a 4/4 removal tool. Rush is really good. Being able to proc the rush, like being able to proc the quest when you want it, because it's like such an easy, simple condition. Like you just play a rush minion. It means that you can make very big board swings. Like you get to have the rush minion that you summon, and then you get this additional rush. It's a lot of like tempo swing on that turn that you complete the side quest. So I think it could have potential for sure. But again, it's very dependent on that critical mass of rush cards. Like what are we getting from the rest of the set? Because right now I don't think there's enough for standard. And I don't think it's the type of card that would make the cunning wild.
Yeah, no, I think it's too weak for wild for sure. Because a 4. I see you have a 4/4. I just beat you.
Yeah, yes. Oh, cute, like adorable.
With my huge board of giant things that nobody wants to admit exist. Yeah, I think if it seems to be good if you're kind of already doing what the card wants you to do. Like if you're already kind of playing minions that have rush that are decent, you know what I mean? Then I could see it as being like, oh yeah, a 1-cost 4/4 deal. And you could probably even theoretically do it in a turn, so you don't play it and let it sit. You can, like you said, you can control it. So you play late game, you can build a swing board, and yeah, I hadn't really thought of it as a swing card until you'd kind of mentioned it, and then I put me down the trail a little bit. It has potential.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah.
And lastly, for the revealed cards, is we have Galakron the Unbreakable. It's the warrior version of Galakron. And he reads Battle Cry, draw 1 minion. Give it +4/+4. So in the theme of warrior wanting to buff things. Invoke twice to upgrade. So do you know if it upgrades to 6/6 or 8/8?
Oh no, the upgrade I think is how many minions you draw, and there's no
how many minions? So draw 2 minions.
Yeah, so it draws 2, then 4, but they always buff +4/+4. I think that's the upgrade.
So it's basically a turn to draw a card. You get 5 health. It seems like it might be slow to me. I mean, warrior likes to be slow, so that's not unusual. But it seems like at turn 7, if you're not developing or doing something major, that could be bad for you.
Yeah, I mean,
That
it
seems-
does depend on what minions you're hitting. Like, Dr. Boom was another card where, you play it, you pass turn 7. So it's the same kind of thing like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, Dr. Boom, you could mitigate some of that because the mechs had rush. It meant that you could make big board swings, you could recover tempo, you could do all that kind of stuff. So like if you're drawing into a whole bunch of really big rush minions and you can mitigate that tempo, or really big taunts, force the opponent to interact, that can be quite good. But I think, like, I'm not sure. Like, I think that aggressive decks don't want this because a lot of the invoke cards are very low tempo. Like, you'll be losing board. Like, you can't really play as an aggressive deck.
Yeah.
And if you're playing control, you just play Dr. Boom, right? Like, I don't think this is
right.
better than Boom. So,
No, it's not.
yeah. So I don't see it home.
It's probably one of those cards that will probably find its home on the dust pile, but maybe not. We'll see. I'm gonna just kind of say, like, I'm gonna say my prediction is it will find its home on the dust pile, just to say that,
Yeah.
just because I want to be right. I want to be right about something. I might as well just bet big here.
Yeah.
It costs me nothing.
Exactly. Yeah.
But have you just incidentally have you noticed that since the current shenanigans in Standard have happened, you notice how the complaining about Dr. Boom being broken have kind of just stopped?
Oh, that's gone. Yeah. That's completely shut out. Yeah.
Like, I guess Blizzard was right not to nerf it. I guess the only way to nerf
They knew.
the best thing to combat it, they knew. And it's like,
Yeah.
Evolve's just going to be busted. We won't.
Yeah, they were like, they see everyone kept saying Dr. Boom's broken. It's like, no, guys, just you wait. Like, you're not started complaining just yet. Like, you guys have no idea. Yeah. Save those complaints for Evolve.
Do you have any further thoughts about any of these cards before we kind of get into the meat of our discussion?
Not the cards in general. I'd just say, like, I'm very excited for the set. I think it's looking like a good set overall. And it looks very strong to me. Some of the cards we talked about today aren't too strong, but I think the set as a whole seems very, very good. So I'm excited to see, like, where it goes as the card reveals get more common in the next couple days. Like, once it all kicks off.
Definitely.
Should be good. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I got to say that they have really been impressive. You know, we're sort of in a downturn for some particular reasons, but I want to say that the last couple sets have just been impressive when they've been released. The cards seem fun. They do interesting things. Usually, like, I've been noticing that what was once like a week time frame where people were new and experimenting and trying things seems to have been extended to 2 weeks, 3 weeks, possibly even a month, in terms of the ability for creative minds to sort of try new things that actually could realistically be viable. I don't know if you had any experience like that.
Well, it's such a contrast to, I think it was last year with Boomsday and Rustican's Rumble. Those sets were very low impact. Like, they did very little to the meta.
Yeah.
And so it's such a contrast where I think these past couple sets and what looks like this one, they're much more powerful. They look like they're much more interesting, and they require a bit more deck building time and figuring stuff out. So yeah, I think they've been really good, and I think there's been a change. Whatever change they've made, I assume they've made some sort of internal design change, like new people, new hires. But I've been very happy with the recent stuff, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I want to say that it's because they hired Alec Dawson, because some of the more recent sets were kind of stuff was when those are the sets he started working on, and
okay.
He was one that always had really. If you ever listen to the Golden Wisp, he was one of the early Hearthstone podcasts that was really good to listen to, and they were early players, hitting legend all the time and covering the competitive scene, but like super concise about the show, and they would cover a lot of that, and so I think that people who this is off topic, but people who have lived in the community and kind of seen both sides of the coin, it seems like they tend to make very good game developers, because they're not just approaching game design and development from just a purely business or design, or I'm going to say they're not just coming from the point of craft of how to do things. They're thinking of it like almost like they're empathetic as a player and what they want to see. So between Alec getting hired and Cora and then Chalky and some of these other people who were in the trenches, if you will, it seemed like the game design has been up because they're coming at it from a player point of view. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No, I can definitely agree with that. I think there's really a difference in perspective, right? Between designing a game and not really like being in the community, and exactly what you said, like being in the trenches, being among the community, reading, hearing from people on stream, and like being, constantly around that kind of thing, and experiencing the game as it's being released to you rather than having 9 months of development. I think if you're designing cards for 9 months or something, like however long the process is, it can get a little easy to, miss the forest for the trees, right? Like you get a little stuck on stuff and you kind of lose perspective on some things. So I definitely like that they're bringing in more player based and more like from the community, that kind of talent. It's very exciting for sure.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, speaking of community and things that are exciting, or maybe lack thereof, let's transition over to our topic at hand. So, I was trolling through my Twitter feed a couple days ago, and I saw that you had posted an article in Reddit about how Wild needs to be fixed. And I'm a Wild player, so it resonated with me, and I immediately jumped on and read it, and that's when I asked you to be on the show because I wanted you to talk about it. So, if you've been under a rock, ladies and gentlemen, for any kind of time, or if you've never played Wild, this may not even have been on your radar, but Wild is a format that has the tendency to be very busted in general, because you can do broken things, you can do all kinds of crazy shenanigans in Wild, and almost on a weekly basis, somebody is discovering something that's crazy that you can do with either just like a crazy game interaction or a crazy deck that could come up that does something maybe you hadn't thought about. But yet, as busted as the things are that you can do, the format is turning out to be busted, but not in the good way. And so I wanted to bring James on to discuss his point of view, why you wrote an article about it, and we can just kind of go from there. So James, from your point of view, what has kind of brought Wild to the point now where it is becoming difficult to want to play in the format, whereas maybe in the past it wasn't? What's happened that's bring it to this point of being more problematic than it maybe was even a year ago?
Well, it's just the ongoing card pool, right? Like, so
Right.
as the card pool gets wider, there are constantly more busted interactions, right? There are things that slip through the cracks. And the problem with Wild is that in Standard, we get nerfs basically every expansion. Sometimes we get like 2 sets of nerfs. We get active balance constantly. Because, design mistakes happen. It happens, guys. Like developers do the best they can. Sometimes they mess up. That's the truth of it. And the problem with Wild is that, the game can be at a high power level. There can be these completely new, like, powerful interactions. But there are still going to be mistakes. Like, stuff goes wrong. It doesn't matter if you're in Standard or Wild. So the problem is that Standard gets these fixes. They get this constant attention. And Wild has been sort of left to rot. That was the wording that I used in the article. Because Wild, like, if you miss like one expansion, a deck or interaction doesn't get fixed, that's okay. Like, that's just one interaction. The next expansion comes along. Oh, there's no Wild nerf then. Oh, okay. Third expansion comes along. And by the time you keep building up month after month, year after year, eventually you hit this critical mass where there are so many broken interactions. There's been like a real lack of care, and the problem sort of just keeps going on like that. So I think that's an issue, and I think there are other issues like in the format, but that's sort of the fundamental one, is sort of a lack of real, what I would describe as care for the format from Blizzard's side of things.
So, yeah, I've wondered about this for a long time. It feels like it's sort of kind of the analogy I'm thinking in my head is really bizarre, but if you've ever seen that movie Inside Out, that chasm that they dump all the old memories into, and they just disregard everything there. It sometimes feels like that's how it is. It's like, well, we don't want to tell players that their cards are useless. It's so, because that would be really bad, because some of us have spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars on the game, and now you can't play with these cards anymore. So we want to do that, but we'll create a new format, but then we're never going to mess with it. We're never going to balance it and tweak it and fix it. We're never going to give it any kind of care or attention. It seems like what you're saying. And why that is I have yet to hear a reason from the devs. Have you ever heard any like illusions or anything like that from the developers as to why maybe they just don't give it the attention? Is it just too difficult? Is it too, or is it just does it just not matter?
I think part of it stems from when they first made Standard and Wild. They first did that split. Their promise was you will always be able to play your old cards in Wild. Don't worry, guys. Like your old cards, they're safe.
Yeah.
And so there's like you said, it's an illusion. Like it's complete BS because you can't play 2016 Miracle Rogue in Wild. That's not happening. Like you can't play that deck unless you want to just lose every game. Like those decks don't exist in the format, and we can pretend they do. We can say, oh well, Azure Drake hasn't been nerfed; it got Hall of Famed, or backs like all that, like whatever rotated cards, they're still there. So technically, you can like quote unquote play them, but they're not real. Like they're not affecting the format. You can't actually ladder with them. So I think it all stems from that initial promise they made, and they kind of don't want to tinker with the format because of that. That's my personal theory or like interpretation. And they want to be very hands off with that. Because Standard, Standard is the format which they're going to make more money from. That's the truth. They make more money from Standard because there are sets rotating. People have to buy more packs to keep up. In Wild, the sets are everlasting. So often if you have a Reno deck, you get the pieces for a Reno deck, you're 90% set for life. Like you've got most of the cards for a long time. So Standard, they make more money from. Standard, it's good that they have like a format to focus on competitively. It lets them streamline a lot of their content so they can have competitive formats. Like the competitive GM is all Standard. So it makes sense. But it's still unfortunate, right? Like it sucks that they're not, going out of their way to balance things and do all that kind of thing that I think needs to be done.
Well, I've wondered for a while why they don't just decide, and it would be sort of kind of an executive decision, why not just make GM for a season Wild format? Why not? Because I think we're far enough along in the history of the game. I mean, the game's been around for almost 6 years now. We're pushing 6 years for a game to be in existence, whereas people will see that and go, I don't know what those cards are. I've not seen those cards before. There are people that just don't play Wild, so maybe they weren't playing in 2014 or 2015 like you and I were. Well, they said, all right, here you go. GM, this next 3 months is Wild only. Boom, go. And see what that does. And then they could see that some of those interactions when the community goes going, I'm tired of seeing Snip Snap Warlock at every single competition. Oh, holy crap, maybe we better nerf that card, or maybe we better do something about that. Because the same way people were getting tired of seeing, warrior mirrors and stuff like that in the Standard rotation.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said though, I think it makes sense for from Blizzard's perspective to have like a certain format that they focus on, that they put the most attention on. They want to encourage people to buy packs and get interest in like that specific format. Because can you imagine like what would happen if they actually did that? They did like a Wild GM tournament, and all of a sudden like games would decide to turn 4 with Sniplock. Like the outrage from the pro community would be ridiculous. Like if they wouldn't stand for it. That there would be people just leaving immediately and saying, I'm going to go play Magic. Like, I'm not dealing with this. Which maybe that would be great. Like, maybe that would be great for the players. Like, if they actually nerfed it and they sort of had to see these problems firsthand. Yeah, like, I just think from a business perspective, in the short term, it does make sense what Blizzard are doing. But I think that long term, hurting their Wild player base is actually very detrimental. Like, this is the format that's probably going to be the one that has to last for a long time and has to keep people... You have to keep people playing and feeling like if they buy their packs, they can keep playing Wild. And it has to be a fun format. So I think long term, it's a bit of a mistake, even though I understand why they're doing what they're doing.
No, I get you there too, because I mean, and I've said this on the show before, is at the end of the day, Blizzard is a business. They have a bottom line. They have shareholders. They have to make money off their games. But at the same time, like I've been in the trenches. I used to only play Standard. Even when Wild was in existence, I really only played hardcore Standard. But Standard has a way, at least from my vantage point, so this is purely my opinion, of getting very stale very quickly. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I want to go to Wild because there's always something that can be... The card pool is so vast anymore. There's always something that can be done that's interesting.
Yes.
And there's always people in the Wild a community that are attempting, like yourself, to attempt to try something out of the box. Like you say, play something off meta. Try to be the only person playing the thing that can do the thing that is either just completely busted, nobody knows about, or it's surprising in a way that people can't plan for. And that's what makes Wild super interesting for me. And I think that if you're going to play a single game for 4, 5, 6 years, I mean, because really Hearthstone, besides the card pool changing, hasn't really changed that much in a fundamentals way, right? You still do the same type of process procedure. You still think about the same types of things. Mm-hmm. You just have different cards to plan for, I guess. Or am I off base in saying that, or am I getting there so far?
No,
you're
on point. Yeah.
So, I mean, I agree with you. They need to think about it. They need to not disenfranchise it, because here's the thing: is like, I think there'll come a point in time, and maybe I'm just speaking from personal viewpoint here, but there come a point in time where it's like, I just don't really want to buy the new standard set. I just don't really care about that. I'd rather just play the game that I have. And, but I think where it gets a little bit dangerous is if I don't want to play standard and I already have all the cards to play the Reno deck, that's the best deck and has been the best deck for 3 years, then what's my incentive to ever buy cards? And what's my incentive to play the game?
And maybe that's where more active balancing, that could swing in, right, and really help the format like that. Like if there was more active balancing, you could really, stop these everlasting decks being always the best deck and stuff like that. So right. I think there's like a middle ground that they could be hitting. That would be ideal to me.
What do you think about this? Do you think that maybe they think the quote unquote active balancing takes place whenever they introduce new standard cards in the format, because they think, well, these new standard cards will kind of tweak Wild enough to where maybe Snip Snap isn't the best deck, or maybe they hope that that's the case, or maybe Big Priest isn't the best deck when it was, things like that.
Yeah, I think that I think generally they would hope, right? You hope that the new set does enough and that they don't have to step in. And that's why, they're very reluctant. It takes a long time for a card like Naga Sea Witch to get nerfed. It took like 8 months. For Barnes, it took like years, right? Like they just sort of hoped that eventually maybe it would go away. And, so that's one part. The more cynical side of me says that they don't necessarily care whether it changes a lot. That they generally might feel like they've already got the Wild players. Like the Wild players are already pretty committed to the game and they don't need to make it the most fun format. Like they might want to push players towards standard. But again, like I've talked about, I think that's a little bit of a incorrect view, or I would certainly disagree with that. And I think a lot of people are like yourself, and definitely me, like I'm in the same boat, where after a while playing standard and being primarily standard, eventually you want to try Wild because there's more cards, like there's more interactions. It's like a bigger sandbox, right? You get more toys, you got more room, and that's definitely a part of why I came to Wild, and I think that'll be a pattern in the future with more players moving forward. I think there'll be a lot more players wanting to check out that format, especially if Blizzard do start balancing it a bit more and caring for the format. I think they can really encourage that sort of switch over.
So, conjecture question here. Why do you think that they were so willing to jump on, and I say willing to jump on, they did it. Why did they nerf Naga Sea Witch into the dirt, but they won't touch other things? Why were they so okay to do that? And we're like, all right, yeah, they care about Wild. They're getting rid of this Naga Sea Witch stuff that we hate so much. And, they nerfed it into the ground. They just, it's not playable anymore. Why were they so willing to do that? But yet they kind of they've been really, I'm just going to say reticent and really not even reticent, like silent on some of the current issues.
Why were they so slow? I mean, part of it I think might have been the Wild Open, just the timing of the event. So like the Wild Open, is the one competitive Wild event that Blizzard does a year, right? It's a big open tournament, like a nice big like 30, 50k prize pool, fantastic, right? A lot of the standard players come over to try that. So normally they do that in January or like January, February. So what happened with Naga is that Naga came around in like October, was there for a long time. A lot of the standard players sort of gave Naga a bit of attention when they tried the Wild Open, and then it was nerfed by, I think, April, like a month or two after, or a bit after that. Yeah. So I think it might have been like an attention thing, a timing thing. Maybe if Snip Snap is still bad by January, or if they ever do a Wild Open again, whenever that'll be, and it gets a bit more attention. Like Barnes got a lot of attention from the Wild Open stuff, so I think it might be a timing thing. Otherwise, I don't know. I really don't know. It feels very similar in terms of like the type of games they create. And I think one more thing, it just popped into my head there, is that part of it might be Naga Sea-Witch was very popular at lower ranks, which are where most players are. Most players are like rank 15 or so. Like that's the majority of the player base.
Sure.
Snip Snap is dead. It does not exist at rank 15. Like the deck is so unpopular at the lower ranks. It's like 1% of the meta. But as you move up, it gets really popular. And so I think that it's also a thing where they're more willing to nerf cards if it's affecting the bulk of the player base, so lower ranks. If it's affecting new players, like players that want to check out Wild, if they immediately get Barnes on a 4 3 games in a row, maybe that's not so good. Whereas Snip Snap, because it's more of a high legend deck or a high ranking deck, a lot of people at 5 and up play it, it's less of a priority. So that's, I think, part of it as well. And that's what makes me very nervous that they're not going to nerf it, because it doesn't exist at lower ranks really. So yeah, we'll see.
So that's kind of a nice segue into sort of the next thing. So what you're saying is some of these decks are actually higher skill cap, and really only the people that are playing them are, let's just say, 5 to legend.
Yeah.
And so that player pool is smaller, and so it's not showing up as much of a blip on their radar, right? So you had written in your article, you talked a lot about legend queue times and some of the issues that related to why climb at all, I guess you could say. You know, if we're going to climb at all, why bother to invest in the game? You even said that you were choosing to not pursue legend or hit legend, because you would anyways, pursue legend this month because of those reasons, or related to those reasons. Would you care to elaborate?
Yeah, absolutely. So like the Wild player base, because they did a big change up of ladder queues. So they changed how legend players can queue into non-legend players. This happened back in, I think, about June or July, which is fantastic for standard. You know, like no one in standard wants to be legend, queue into a non-legend, and if they lose a ridiculous amount of MMR. So they lose a lot of ranks, basically. They fixed up the queues. But the problem is Wild, because of like you're putting a system from standard onto Wild, it doesn't really work. Like the player base is too small. So because in Wild you can only really queue into other legend players, it means that sometimes you get these ridiculous 10-minute queues because the player base is so small. So for me, I just started streaming. Like I've recently started streaming back in August or September. And for me, this is the first time I'm experiencing this. I can't really stream the game if it's going to be queue simulator. Like, who wants to watch someone press the queue button for 10 minutes? Like, it's not great. It's not great content. It's really bad content, right? So what I did was I intentionally would concede games. I probably hit rank 1 5 stars probably 30 times, maybe more, and I would constantly just concede my way back to like rank 2 or 3. Like once I got to that climb, I just go back just to intentionally avoid legend. And that feels horrible.
Wow.
Like that feels really bad.
Yeah, why it sounds almost insane to even like suggest that, because most people, you know, if they're going to hit legend and they're rank 1 5 stars, man, they're praying to God that they don't lose that game. They want to win that next game. They don't want to, because the reality is it's very easy to lose 5 games in a row at that area on the ladder. But you were saying you're doing it on purpose just to keep your stream alive so that your viewers can go, oh, he's in queue. Okay, well, we can wait a second. Well, let's 10 minutes go by. You know, I don't really want to watch this anymore. I can watch something else.
Yeah.
So it's injuring your stream because,
exactly.
well, there's nobody around to play against. That's just crazy to me. That's crazy.
It's definitely like, it's not something that I've just talked about either. This is a problem that many streamers have talked about. Like Get Me Out. Get Me Out is one of the players who has one of the bigger Wild streams, and every season, without a doubt, he will say the words, I'm just trying to avoid legend. I don't want to hit legend. We can play meme decks until like later in the month. And so it's not just a me thing. And Ruffle's another player who, you know, I think he might have more fun playing bad decks, but part of it is also queue times. I think he's talked about this as well. Like, he doesn't want to hit legend, or in the past he hasn't wanted to hit legend because of that queue time issue. So it's definitely hurts content creators a lot. And it feels horrible, right? Like no one wants to be incentivized to do worse. Like I hate that. I want to try and hit rank 1 legend, dude. I want to play the game and do my best. And that feels like something has gone very wrong as a game developer if your players are doing things like that. That just feels like there's such a disconnect there between what you should be trying to do and what the player base is doing. And so that feels horrible. And I hope that there is some adjustment.
Yeah, because if there are, I think Slizzle posted a week or so ago. He said he noted on the ranking system on Hearthstone's website, it said there was a top 100 legend for Wild only went up to like 94 or 96 or something like that.
Yeah.
And he said there are only 96 legends in Wild. Hey, everybody start playing. So, and it was kind of almost kind of tongue in cheek. Start playing, start hitting legends, so we have somebody to queue against.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's so if you're talking about ostensibly a handful of people that are trying to play at this high level, and so it probably isn't showing up on the Richter scale in the Blizzard offices. So what's their incentive to mess with it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I wonder it's like, so it's probably no wonder that this is an issue if they're not even going to touch card balancing. It's like, well, it's not going to affect anybody.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, that's a hard pill to swallow, as somebody who, the reason I'm playing your format is because I have given you hundreds, possibly thousands of dollars of my money. It's like, aren't I in like the preferred customer category by now? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Where's that gold class? Where's that first class treatment? That's what we want.
Like, shouldn't you say welcome, Mr. Gould, when I you know what I mean?
Yes.
May I take your jacket?
Yeah, we can have our personal Bob the bartender waiting for us. Like, yeah, just giving us all the good treatment. That'd be great.
Yeah, I don't hit legend every month. I've hit legend, 5 or 6 times, something like that overall, just because I'm one of those people, like, I got a job and a family, and
yeah, for sure.
And as much as I would like to just sit around all the time and play Hearthstone, it's just not on the table for me. But so usually when I hit legend, as is when I'll hit it late in the month, and I've never had trouble queuing games in that regard. But
right.
I can see for people who are way more serious and who are much better players than myself, who it's not an if they hit legend, it's a when they hit legend sort of conversation. I can see, like, it's not just all the balancing issues. Like, actually, if it takes 18 to 20 minutes to queue a game, that's 18 to 20 minutes that you don't get back. And then you're therefore punished for if you decide to just, like, walk away or not pay attention. If you're trying to run a stream and that's your vocation, or just any kind of income coming through there, you're getting punished by that. Because, I mean, with the tens of thousands of possibilities of streamers that people could watch, if your stream isn't kicking out the content, that just go somewhere else. It's not even a thought in people's heads. Oh, well, this is not what I want it to be. Next thing, boom.
Yeah. And
so
it's definitely like an issue. Sorry, it's definitely an issue that affects, like, it's like 0.1 of a 0.1 of the player base, right? It's such a minor, like, small player pool that are affected by this, but it still hurts, right? Like, it still hurts when you're hurting, like, your most core player base, the people who are most devoted to the game, the people who have spent the most time, not necessarily money, but spent the most time and are really good and love the game. And hurting those players in particular, that sucks. So yeah, like, I don't expect any fix to happen, and I was very surprised by the amount of attention the post I made got. I really wasn't expecting the attention, but and I certainly wasn't expecting a response from Blizzard, but I definitely.
Did they give you one?
No, there was no response from Blizzard, and I wasn't expecting it.
Okay.
I would have liked it. But yeah, from the community though, it was very great. It was definitely great to hear so much feedback and so much support about some of the issues that I was talking about. Even if they do generally affect a much smaller percentage of the player pool.
Yeah, we're the people that are wild players. We're the ones that have been dug in the longest in a lot of ways, because we have the card pool. We don't have to go. We bought, let's see, what it was. We bought Black Mountain when it came out. Not posthumously after they didn't have it for a while, and then they re-released it. Because it's nostalgic, but it's just more fun to play. But I think, honestly, bring back Blade Flurry, and unnerf it. Bring that sucker back. See what it does. You know what I mean? I would love, and I say this for standard too, but I would love to see them doing things that allow the game to be just nuts. Like they say they want busted things to happen. If that's true, unnerf Blade Flurry. See what happens. You know what I mean?
Let's see. Yeah, I'd be down for that for sure. Like this random events, like random cards getting unnerfed for even if it was like a set period of time. Just mix it up. Like give us new stuff constantly. That's what I would love.
And if it's awful and it's terrible, nerf it. Just nerf it a different way. You know what I mean? Who says the card has to be nerfed? Especially in Wild, where it's kind of like no holds barred. You know, nerf it in a different way than you did before. Like, okay, take away Blade Flurry hitting face, but then maybe leave it at 2 mana instead of 4. You know what I mean? Something like that. So, if you could have your pie in the sky, like, you know, and fix the things you want to fix. I probably have already, you know, said maybe a couple things that resonated, but if you could have your pie in the sky and fix the format to kind of be better than it is now, maybe you start with small things to big things, what would you have?
Like, I think it's not necessarily about, like, specific card nerfs. So, like, I could talk about, you know, Mech Warper to make it so they don't reduce below 1. Like, that's a very obvious fix for the Snip Snap. It means that combo's gone away. It makes the Mech Paladin and Mech Hunter openers less degenerate, like, if they can't go to 0 cost, the mechs.
Right.
So, like, that's, like, a temporary fix. But there's always going to be problems in Wild. So I think the bigger issue is, like, hey, it doesn't matter what the specific changes. Just, like, have fixes, like have updates constantly every expansion. That'd be great. If there was a tournament once an expansion, you know, that's not that often. Like once an expansion, some sort of Wild tournament, that would be great. It would be fantastic to sort of support the game like that. So for me, it's not so much about those like very specific problems in any meta. It's more about these bigger issues, like this systematic ongoing stuff. Like be more active, have more communication with the player base. Have competitive Wild tournaments once an expansion, stuff like that. That's what I'd be. That would be great. Like as a Wild player, I'd be super into that. Definitely, like even more than the Q stuff. Like the Q stuff is, I realize it affects me and not everyone else. The tournament, that's a bigger player pool, or the buffs and nerfs, that's a bigger player pool, and I think that would help a lot.
Yeah. I agree. I could see that being good. And I agree with you. You know, people want to make it about this one card. If this one card gets changed, then life will be good and everybody will be happy and the people will rejoice. But the funny thing, I think people never think about is that one card just takes a different name. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just about, I think what they need to do is they need to just keep their ears to the ground a little more, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, so
yeah.
If it's not Barnes and it's going to be something else, just figure out what that is. Listen to your player base because we'll tell you. And then, you know,
we'll tell you.
Let it go on for leave it on for a little while, and then say, all right, now this card's not going to be the card that shall not be named, and we will get another card. We'll put another one. And I think as long as people know that there's nothing that is going to have any kind of huge longevity and just kind of keep going on and on and on. I mean, can you imagine what would happen if they had said that Evolve will be in standard indefinitely?
Yeah, exactly. Can you? Yeah, the outcry would be just ridiculous.
Oh, it would be, you know, torches and pitchforks in the street practically.
Yeah.
You know, or on Reddit, one of the two. So, but I mean, a hard date, like, yeah, we're gonna fix it here. You know, people are like, they're not talking about nerfing Evolve or doing it with it. It's like, yeah, because it's done. As soon as the new set drops, it's out. So people know that, and so they're willing to tolerate it. And the people are really good at Shaman don't seem to mind it so much. Because that orange crystal for some people is just enough allurement to, you know, pacify. I digress. So anyways, any further thoughts about anything in your article that you wanted to point out or draw attention to that I might have missed?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground here. Yeah, I think I'm good. Yeah, we hit on everything, I think.
So you're not going for Legend? Is there any deck you're going to be trying out while you're kind of biding your time? Like anything?
No, I actually
you want to give a sneak peek on.
I actually hit Legend like yesterday. It's deep enough in the month.
Oh, you couldn't help it.
No, it was deep enough in the month where I'm like, all right, it has to be okay by now. Like, there's enough players. So I finally decided, and hey, if it was really bad, I can just go to EU. I can just go to Asia. We'll figure it out. But yeah, I finally went for it. So yeah, I've been playing a lot of like Reno Priest and stuff. It's been fun.
Reno Priest. You know, I do enjoy Reno decks, not because, you know, I hate playing against them because, you know, that moment when you think you've won and then, nope, Reno, and by the way, I'm going to bounce a couple more copies in my hand, you know. There's that, but I've been enjoying some Reno Mage, so it's guilty pleasures, that's for sure. So what would you recommend right now at this stage of the month to our wild friends, because I'll post this before the month's over, what would you recommend to play on ladder? If you're, you know, rank 5 to 1, what would you recommend?
Are we trying to tell them to win? Like, we want them to win as many games as possible?
Yep. Get that orange crystal.
Yeah. I think Secret Mage is a really, really fantastic deck. If you're into Snip Snap and you're willing to sort of learn the deck and learn a little bit how it works and you want to put in time like that, Snip Snap, excellent deck. If you just kind of want to jam with something you might be a bit more familiar with, Secret Mage, really good. Odd Rogue, really good. So that would be my big three. Big three right now. Snip Snap, Secret Mage, Odd Rogue.
Okay, so kind of what the tier lists are kind of saying.
Yeah, I think the tier list is like pretty accurate. I think we're deep enough in the expansion where everything's sort of, you know, we've got like a consensus. Like if people are wanting to win, like everyone sort of is on the same page.
So, do you have any off meta decks that you'd recommend? Like,
yeah,
if you see
for sure.
A lot of Secret Mage, what do you got?
Well, I think Reno Priest, like I've been jamming that, and that's what I used to hit Legend. I had a lot of fun with that. I think it can deal well with Snip, because it has a lot of the like silence and big AoE. So if you can fight for board and not get OTK'd, Reno Priest can be great. You also have Reno for the Secret Mage, you know? You can always beat Secret Mage like that, just draw the good card.
Cool.
And yeah, and I think so Reno Priest is a good one. Other off-meta stuff, I think Cube Warlock is quite good right now. And not many people are playing that. So if you want to jam Cube Warlock, that's another one I really recommend.
Awesome. I love Cube Warlock. It was one of the few times in my Hearthstone career where I actually hit Legend early in the month that the deck first came out. So I was learning it while everybody else was learning it, and I was able to hit Legend with it in Standard.
Yeah,
so
it's one of my favorites.
Special place in my heart.
Yeah.
Well, there's something just kind of awesome about having a board full of Doom Guards and just dumbstring somebody like you can. It has such good comeback if you know what I mean. So
yeah, no, it's one of my favorites ever. Like definitely one of my favorite Warlock decks. So yeah, I try to jam it. I try to play a bit when I can.
Well, I think that we've basically hit an hour, and that went by really, really fast. I won't lie. We're at 56 minutes.
Yeah.
So I guess James Corbett, thank you so much for giving me giving us, I should say, some of your time and your expertise and talking about a format we're very passionate about. So you want to tell our listeners where they can find you on stream and otherwise if they should so desire?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. To the listeners, like if you go want to check out more of my stuff, I stream at Corbett Games, and you can find me on Twitter with the same handle. And I'm going to have a lot of YouTube content coming out very soon. So you can check out those two places. You can get YouTube content. But that's pretty much it. I think that's all the selling out that I think I have in me. So that's those.
Well, it's the least I can do for you giving me some of your time to be on the show. And I'll put all those links in the show notes. And I'll see if I can get a deck list code or two from some Reno Priest and whatnot. Because somebody will hear it and say, I want to play that. Where's the link? And it'd just be nice to have it in the show notes. So,
for sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this episode 207 of Velen's Chosen. And hopefully the wild format won't be on Blizzard's Island of Misfit Toys too much longer. But if it is, just remember as you're wandering around on that island, just remember that not all who wander are lost. Thanks, everyone, and take care.
Bye, guys.